What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We have a great episode lined up for you this week because we have the great Rob Ninkovich on with us. We're talking all things Drake Maye. We're talking all things Patriots offense in the ecosystem offensively that they build around Drake Maye and how maybe they should tweak that or not tweak it when it comes to Alex Van Pelt. Moving forward, we're going to talk about what Ninkovich likes most about the Patriots defense right now, coming off of a 3.9 sack performance in Chicago against Ninkovich's old hometown Chicago Bears. We're also talking a little bit about Jerod Mayo and the culture he's established, the use of soft versus not soft. He has some interesting takes on that. So a great conversation with Rob Ninkovich. Before we launch into that, just want to hit you with 5 quick Next Patsy storylines. Let's do that. 5 quick ones before we get into things with Ninkovich. And number 1, this is an unloading of the notebook, if you will. Number 1 deals with Drake Maye. Of course, how could it not? 2 things to take away from that Chicago Bears performance. Number 1, the bounce back, the resiliency. We talked about it on the Aftermath pod, but to throw a hellacious pick, quite frankly, just a clear mistake by him. He said he was throwing it away. It looked like he was trying to feather it over a linebacker. Did he even see the linebacker? Who's to say? Very windy conditions. Did that impact the throw? I don't know. I was on the field after the game and damn near taken off my feet by the wind. They call it the Windy City for a reason, I guess. Yeah, they do. But be that as it may, ends up going 5 for 5, 2 drives later, putting it in the end zone. The only touchdown of the day for either team. Subsequent drive, they get the football back with just a few seconds. They're able to hit Kayshon Boutte with 16 seconds left, get to the line, spike the football, Joey Slye field goal. Mwah, thing of beauty from a situational football perspective. But to me, the even bigger story coming out of that game was all about Drake Maye's leadership and what he did in the week prior to that Bears game, talking to the team, addressing them on Wednesday after a sloppy practice. Mike Owenu telling me that lit a fire under us. That sort of thing makes us want to go to war for him. Demario Douglas telling me I never would have been able to do that as a rookie. I'm way too shy in front of all those people like that. But it just told us the fact that he was even willing to do it. Okay, it's serious now, i.e., we really should be heeding his words because of our 22-year-old rookie quarterback, yeah, he's our leader, but if he's feeling right now like he has to address us about these certain things, we better get on our details. And maybe you could get on the Patriots for not getting on them sooner than that. Maybe you could get on them for maybe not heeding the words of whether it's Jerod Mayo or Alex Van Pelt or their positional coaches. But Drake Maye's words appeared to resonate with his teammates. I thought it was interesting, too. If you read our takeaways right after the game, Jalen Polk telling me that he actually was talking to Drake Maye before that address and told him, bro, you're a leader of this team. Don't be afraid to take that next step and become even more vocal than you've been. And then you get everything you got. It ends up on the broadcast, and we're asking questions about it after the fact, and we're getting some great commentary from the players around him. One of the things that I've been able to find out subsequent to all that is that that sort of leadership is there and has persisted, and that relationship building, which I would put under the subhead of leadership, continues. So Pop Douglas telling me, this guy is texting me all the time. He'll send me videos. He'll send me videos of other teams and other teams' receivers. And if I'm supposed to run a certain route or say I did run a certain route in practice that day and Drake wants it a little bit differently, he'll send me a video of another receiver with another club running that same route, different offense, but same concept, same exact route that we're looking for, and he'll tell me that's what I need from you. That, to me, is a form of leadership. And I just like the idea of it for a multitude of reasons. Number 1 being, okay, he's clearly putting in the extra work. This is after hours, so to speak. And so he's still grinding away at tape. He's still thinking about that day's practice. How can we make it a little bit better? And he's doing the extra work, and he's going through other clips to find exactly what he's looking for to show one of his receivers so that he can put his receivers in a better light moving forward, and vice versa, right? If he knows that receiver is going to run that out route exactly the way, and I'm pulling a name out of my own head, this was not a name given to me, but if it's Deebo Samuel running a similar route in San Francisco, that's going to help all parties involved, which should make everybody happy. And I could tell you that somebody like Pop Douglas really appreciates that he's getting that extra coaching, advice, preference, that sort of communication from his quarterback. Additionally, how about a little victory meal on a Victory Monday? Drake Maye, Jacoby Brissett, the offensive line, ended up going to Grill 23 in Boston, watching Monday Night Football between the Dolphins and the Rams, so they get a little advanced scouting on their next opponent. Rams obviously coming to Foxboro for Week 11. But even that kind of thing I find interesting because it sounded like it was May who sort of sparked the idea to go. You could listen to it. If you haven't already, you should because it's pretty entertaining. It's about 7 minutes long. It's Drake Maye mic'd up in that game in Chicago. And I would say, I don't know, a good 50% of it, maybe more, is Drake Maye hyping up his teammates, pumping up his offensive linemen, going around, giving everybody high fives, whether it's the defense during their great performance that day. Again, the offensive line, his receivers after they make a play. He's all about encouraging others. And he understands that that can have a positive impact. I asked him about it today during his press conference. Here's what he said. He sort of smiled and said, quote, I think I was saying a lot of the same things over and over in the mic'd up. So I kind of try to keep it simple. Don't try to bug anybody too much because everybody's kind of got their own thing on game day. But yeah, I think pumping them up, everybody feels good when you say, hey, let's go. Hey, nice play. Or hey, great job up front. I think little things like that can go a long way in being the leader on the offense and pumping those guys up. So he's doing that in game. After the game, the microphone caught him telling the offensive line as he's hugging them in the locker room after the win, hey, let's go get something to eat tomorrow night. Little thing like that. And it does. It comes to fruition. They're at Grill 23. They're having themselves some steaks. I could not get anybody to tell me who actually paid the bill there because you had some pretty highly paid guys in that bunch between, I don't know, Owenu and Jacoby Brissett's had a nice little career for himself. Drake Maye's a high first-round pick, so we know how those things are slotted. So I did have Owenu tell me that everybody chipped in. So who knows? I kind of like the fact that they're not telling me who paid, but it sounds like it was a good time, and it sounds like that kind of thing can be a real chemistry builder. And for a team that needs to do as much as it can, to squeeze as much as it can out of the talent that it has on the roster, those kinds of moments, to me, are worth noting. We did it with Tom Brady, and I'm not saying Drake Maye will beat Tom Brady ever. But when it comes to the ability to establish something with the guys in the room, hearing the old stories that have become legend, like, Brady insisting that his offensive line be included in I believe it was at the time a Visa commercial where they're all at a expensive restaurant. And so you got Matt Light and Dan Copen and Tom Brady and all the rest sitting around a table and making a funny commercial. Those are the kinds of things, because Brady wanted to. He wanted them involved. Those are the kinds of things that I do think, to steal a line from Drake Maye, can go a long way. So those are the Drake Maye next Patsy storylines. Let's fire through a couple other ones really quickly. Yannick Ngakoue out at Patriots practice today, working with Joe Kim, hand-fighting defensive line specialist. We know he can get after the quarterback. Let's see if he can play on all three downs. It sounds like they are encouraging him to go after a multifaceted role. So can they use him the way they use Anthony Jennings? First, second, third down. Can they use him the way they use Keon White? First, second, third down. I don't think they're ever going to be bumping him inside the way they bump 280-pound Keon White inside because he's just not that guy. A little smaller, about 250 pounds. Even smaller than Anthony Jennings, in my opinion, if you were to line him up side by side. So, to me, he's wearing number 55, Josh Uche's old number. That's the kind of role I would envision him taking on, especially early in his Patriots career as he's still getting adjusted to the system. Get out there on third and long. See if you can get after the quarterback. See if you can get us a sack. See if you can kill a drive for an opposing offense. But we will see moving forward. To his credit, he did say he was excited. He was happy to be at Gillette Stadium. He compared this situation to the situation that he was in Jacksonville when he was drafted to Jacksonville in 2016. They won 3 games that year. And the next year they were in the AFC title game. So he was very quick to bring up that example of something he had already experienced in his career and going from the Ravens, one of the best teams in the AFC, to the Patriots, one of the worst, and that Jaguars experience being the reason why he's not all that disappointed in this sort of transition. So at least as of now, he is saying all the right things when it comes to being part of what the Patriots are trying to establish here in New England. We'll track how they use him in practice, how they use him in games, of course, moving forward here on Next Pass. Kayshon Boutte, go-to guy. That catch with 16 seconds left, the ability to bounce up, find the official. Something that I feel like we have to highlight here. If anyone in that receiver room is establishing himself for next year, it has to be Kayshon Boutte, right? I know Jalen Polk's a second-round pick. You're not necessarily going to get rid of that guy, but I think you're still in the stages of, is he a starter? Is he just a depth option? How much are we really willing to trust this guy moving forward? But Kayshon Boutte, to me, certainly looks like he can be part of whatever receiver group you're coming back with in 2025. They need to upgrade there. They need more talent there. But this is not something I thought I would be saying at the start of the season, quite frankly. But credit to Kayshon Boutte and the amount of improvement he's done on his own accord, making sure that he is turning into, at least in 2024, an indispensable part of this offense. Where would they be without Kayshon Boutte? Again, I can't believe I'm saying that, and I know they only have 3 wins on the season. But boy, it would be a lot uglier without that guy when you consider some of the big plays that he's made for them in some of their better games this year. And so for Drake Maye to have somebody like that you trust in those moments, that to me is key. And I can tell you, talking to some Bears people before that Bears game, they viewed him as one of the key pieces to the passing game. Again, as meager as the passing output had been going into Chicago, basically the way the Bears had them scouted was when they throw short to intermediate, they like Pop Douglas. When they throw deep, they like Kayshon Boutte. And in critical situations, they like Hunter Henry. I think they might have to amend that, or future defenses that play the Patriots might have to amend that to include Kayshon Boutte into the critical situations conversation. Maybe even Austin Hooper, the way he has played of late. He just seems dependable. And that's leading me to point number 4 in terms of the next Pats discussion points that we would have here on this podcast. 12 personnel, people. 12 personnel. All this discussion of all the depth they have at that receiver position, they're not giving those guys a lot of opportunity to get out there on the field because they like 12 personnel so much, and I get it. Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, you know where they're going to be. Are they going to light the world on fire in terms of explosive plays down the field? Not necessarily. Although Austin Hooper made a tremendous 28-yard catch deep down the field on that 50-50 high point right over the top of Kyler Gordon, one of the best slot corners in the league this year. Just a tremendous throw by Drake Maye and a great catch by Austin Hooper. So when they can block the way they blocked in Chicago, and reminder, that Chicago defense was top 5 in points allowed going into that game. That was a legit defense. That team is in a spot similar to the one the Patriots were in last year. Good defense, horrible offense. Defense being put in bad spots on a consistent basis, and still the point totals are being kept relatively low. So I still respect that Chicago Bears defense. I think that's the reason why Matt Eberflus still has a job, quite frankly, is because he's a defensive guy and they've been okay on that side of the ball. But for the Patriots to be using 12 personnel at the rate they're using it, in situations like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 1, and you've got 2 tight ends out there, there aren't many teams in the league that are willing to do that, especially with the types of tight ends the Patriots have. And I won't go so far as to say that, Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are blocking specialists by any stretch of the imagination, but they're also not Kyle Pitts. They're not Travis Kelce. They're not even George Kittle, who, in my opinion, might be the best all-around tight end in football, but somebody you could argue in those obvious passing situations is a legitimate weapon. These guys are just sure-handed, trustworthy as they come, and it's going to limit opportunities for the receiver group. And so moving forward, knowing that that's what they are probably going to want to do because of what it can do for them in the run game, how it can help sell their play-action game, the receivers, when they get their opportunities, need to make the most of them. And so it should be, in my opinion, a lot of Kayshon Boutte. It should be a lot of Pop Douglas. It should be a lot of Jalen Polk. It should be much more of Javon Baker, who played just 4 snaps last week. KJ Osborne played a lot last week, really in place of Kendrick Bourne. I'm not sure why. To me, if you don't like Kendrick Bourne and you're trying to figure out what you have moving forward, you have to try to run these young guys out there more. So does that mean it's got to be Polk, Boutte, Douglas for the vast majority of snaps? I would be okay with that. And if you need to get a 4th guy in there to spell someone, see if it can be Baker. This is the time. You've got 7 games left. You got to try to give somebody like Baker a little bit of runway, because he's not in the same situation Polk is. He's a 4th-round pick. Give him a little runway, see if he can develop throughout the course of this season and be a relatively dependable option. When you go about building your roster this coming offseason, feel like you have a good chance of projecting out who he'll be. Because if you have no idea because he didn't play at all, well, now you can't consider him anything for 2025, in my opinion. And if you do, you're making a mistake. So now's the time to do it. I understand you want to be as good as you can be and you want to try to win as many games as you can win. I don't think the difference between KJ Osborne getting 20 snaps and Javon Baker getting 20 snaps is winning or losing you football games. I just don't. Maybe they feel differently, and maybe it's that far away for Javon Baker in terms of his development and understanding where he needs to be. And if that's the case at practice, then you can't put him out there, but you also can't trust him to be anything for you next year. Because if it's that bad now, 10 weeks into the season, I'm not sure, again, how you can forecast that he's going to be a part of your team moving forward. Because he's had all of training camp, he's had 10 weeks, he has been healthy, he's been able to practice. If he's just not giving you anything, you got to shrug your shoulders and say he didn't give us anything, and you can't move forward with him in your plans. And you adjust accordingly, and you build accordingly at that position in free agency in the draft. Last thing, Del Pettis. Del Pettis out of Troy. 60 starts at Troy. Guy's played some football. He's getting an opportunity now with the safeties out. Duggar out. Obviously, Jabril Peppers out. Duggar was back at practice on Wednesday, by the way. We'll see if he's able to actually play on Sunday against the Rams. But Del Pettis coming up with a sack, coming up in run support, had a pass breakup in that game against the Bears. Another undrafted free agent find for the New England Patriots. Hasn't happened every year necessarily, and I'm not saying he's a star, but he can play. He's a contributing factor on special teams as well. And so I just wanted to give Del Pettis, Dirty Del Pettis, as Tom Curran would call him. I believe that nickname came about because during one of their full contact practices in training camp, he put a good shot on Hunter Henry, and I think it had everyone in attendance. The thousands of Patriots fans that were watching this was relatively early in camp. Beautiful day, good crowd. And Del Pettis put one of the best Patriots players on his ass. and with some force. It felt like a little bit much, but hey, he's a rookie trying to win a job. I don't blame the guy. It's a physical position. He's been told to have a physical practice. I thought that was a positive moment for Del Pettis. So we're not going to allow that nickname to catch on here on Next Pats. I just did want to give him a shout out. And maybe we should call him the processor or something. I'm working off of Dell. I don't know. If you got good Del Pettis nickname ideas, send them this way. All right. Enough of the Next Pat storylines. Just wanted to hit those really quickly. I know that wasn't really quick. I'm just not capable of that, and so I apologize. But now, dear friends, now we have our conversation with Rob Ninkovich. Drake Maye, Alex Van Pelt, Jerod Mayo, the Patriots defense. We're hitting it all. Here's Ninkovich. There he is. There's Rob Ninkovich. Fresh off the Patriots beating Rob Ninkovich's old hometown team, the Chicago Bears. Ooh, little Robbie Ninkovich probably hurts after a game like that one. But you follow this team very closely. You're watching the New England Patriots with a young quarterback play better, it seems, on a week-after-week basis. What would have you most excited about Drake Maye and how he's looked, Rob, even as a defensive player? You as a player, take us into that mindset. You're watching him play the way he's played. What has you most excited?
Well, number one would just have to be his pocket awareness and knowing when to move up in the pocket, get out of the pocket, avoid the rush. And if you watch the last couple games, they were trying to mirror add a defender and just basically mirror the quarterback. And when you do that, you're taking one less guy out of coverage. So when you play a team like Chicago, where you're able to get out of the pocket and it really breaks down in the secondary, that's when receivers are able to get open. And, even I think the one play that impressed me the most wasn't even a complete pass. It was the one where he got out of the pocket. There was pressure inside. He avoided the sack. He got out of the pocket. He was rolling right. That was the one where he was literally out of bounds and he threw the ball. And it was caught, but I think it was where the receiver stepped out and came back in. It would have been a touchdown if he never went back out. But that play in particular, it's impressive because there's not a lot of quarterbacks that, number one, have the ability to move around like he does. But then number two, his accuracy is very, very impressive. So to be running out of bounds and at the last second just say, hey, let me take a shot at this and put the ball in a spot where only one guy can get it, his own player, I think is kind of pretty exciting and telling that the future in New England is bright with him as the quarterback. So everybody on offense, when you have a quarterback that can move and get out of situations, is better. The receivers are better because, obviously they're 1,000, 1,000. Okay, let's go play backyard football. Let's get open. A lot easier when you have a quarterback that can get out. And an offensive lineman, let's face it, you have to block for 1,000, 1,000, and it's a sack. That's tough. So they're able to make the play, stay alive, keep going. And, thinking back to even the last play of the game where they put it into overtime, that play again is spectacular. So you have a guy that's able to move, extend the play, guys get open, and now we just need a few pieces offensively. And I think, they're going to be looking pretty good in the next few years.
Well, I want to ask you about a little bit about his support staff. Let's just put it that way on the offensive side. But I do want to ask you quickly, as a pass rusher yourself, what would be the most annoying part, the most frustrating part about trying to pass rush against Drake Maye?
Well, it puts the pass rusher in a bind because you obviously don't want to get too high. If you pass rush too high and he steps up, you're starting big lanes. You're opening big lanes. So as a right-handed quarterback, you don't want to, on the left side of the line of scrimmage, run too far up the field because that right B gap offensively or left B gap on defense is the most important space. If you get too high and you don't have a tackle that's able to fill that void, that's where the quarterback hits his back foot, steps up in the pocket, gets out to the right of the defense or the right of the offense. If you're looking at it on the defense, it's the defensive left, offensive right. That's really when it's tough to try and cover. And when you're pass rushing, you want to put pressure on the quarterback. That's your job. But if you're getting too aggressive and you're behind the quarterback, we all know the worst place to be is behind the quarterback. You're given all the space in front of the quarterback to see down the field, step up and decide, am I going to run the ball or am I going to throw the ball? And the only thing I would say about Drake in this game, can we start sliding, dude? There's a few moments where you're thinking to yourself, he's going to slide, right? And he just goes head first. And it's scary. I don't like that because you need to protect yourself a little better. We've seen other quarterbacks, maybe one down south, that hasn't had great luck when it comes to getting hit. So I think he needs to have a little bit of lesson on sliding. Let's get a Red Sox out there to have him slide a little bit. I can't take the head first diving, especially when he's getting hit by a linebacker or anybody, that is, considering he was knocked out of the game against the Jets. So let's slide more, Drake. Okay, that's my advice as a older man now in my 40s. Let's slide and let's live to see another down. And as a pass rusher, you're causing those guys fits. You're just, it's really tough to decide, what do we do? Do we stay aggressive and do we try to get after them, or do we kind of pull back a little bit on the aggressiveness and bull rush? But when you bull rush and you try to collapse the pocket on a guy that's mobile, you're giving the receivers more time. So it's a balance. You got to figure out, hey, what's the best way to go about rushing this guy? And you got to decide, which way are you going? You're going more aggressive, or you're trying to be smart and have a mirror guy, but then you lose a guy in the back end.
It has been really interesting to see how the offensive line has performed these last few weeks with Drake Maye, quarterback, versus Jacoby Brissett. The personnel's basically been the same, and it's nobody's idea of an all-pro on offensive line. You've got three guys, I think, right now that are in the starting lineup that were cut by their teams at the end of training camp. So these are essentially practice squad guys, or they were in the very recent past, and now they're your starters. And they were allowing 50% pressures just a few weeks ago with Jacoby Brissett. Now that number has come way down. The sack numbers have come down, so obviously his mobility really helping them out. I did want to ask you something, as, again, former player, somebody who understands how important the relationships are in the locker room. And obviously it's a unique relationship between the quarterback and his offensive line. But talking to some guys in the locker room today, it sounds like Drake Maye, Jacoby Brissett as well, took the offensive lineman out. I can't quite figure out who fit the bill, who actually paid for dinner, Rob, but they all go to Grill 23. They hang out. They watch Monday Night Football. As a former player, does that mean anything to you at all that Drake Maye might have sort of sparked this and gotten everybody together and gone out together, or is that just sort of a run-of-the-mill thing?
Well, somebody started it. I mean, if they weren't going to dinner, somebody said, "Hey, let's go to dinner." But that's a great thing. I think back to every Thursday night, the linebackers would go have a dinner together, and it was awesome. You know, you're building chemistry, and at the end of the year, really, you're with your family, and that's the great thing about a locker room. You're together so much, and you spend so much time with those guys. They become really close to you. They're definitely just as a family member that you go home and you have dinner with. You want to go see those guys afterwards too, and you want to continue to build those relationships. And also, you know, you think about the offensive line with the guys that have been released and now they're here. Think about the opportunity that you have in front of you if you walk into this situation with a young quarterback and really they didn't have anybody in front of you that was highly paid or was a high draft pick. So you have the opportunity to come in and honestly just go out there and play football and earn a spot. And some of these guys are, if they can continue to perform and have chemistry, and that's the key point is chemistry. You have to continue to build chemistry. And I understand the season isn't what everybody wants in New England. They want playoffs, blah, blah, blah. But you got to have a little patience. Drake Maye's a rookie. He looks promising. The offensive line has definitely improved with him as your quarterback. So maybe you could use the guys that you took off the scrap heap, and maybe they could resurrect their career, similar to a guy like myself, with a little opportunity and some reps and improve. And maybe you don't have so many holes that you think you had to fill this offseason maybe a month ago that you do right now.
What do you make of the job Alex Van Pelt has done? It's interesting. There's been some scuttlebutt over the course of the last couple days or so where, okay, maybe ownership's calling around to other places across the league to try to figure out, get a feel for how they might be able to improve the situation around Drake Maye going into year two. And some people have taken that and said they might be kicking the tires on some other coaches. If it were you and you've seen Drake Maye grow, play pretty well here, would you be wanting to stick with Alex Van Pelt, or are you looking for the next great thing to make sure that you're really maximizing Drake Maye's potential?
Well, I think you have to continue the rest of the season and see how he progresses. But kicking the tires, that's just the way the NFL works. There's always going to be some form of looking at who's available. Is that guy potentially maybe after the season who isn't available now? Would he be available after the year's over? So I think that's just the nature of the business. And there's always going to be that, hey, is that guy potentially going to be available for this role? We don't know how this role is going to shape out, considering, you know, they still have more football to play and you still want to see progression. I think if you look at the offense as a whole, you know, they struggle to run the football, and there could be a combination of things here. Is it scheme? Is it player talent? Or is it just execution? And, you know, you look at some of the issues that they have running the football. Okay, there was Stevenson had some holding on to the ball issues early in the season. They sit him down, and they just don't have the amount of yards that they were having early in the year. Start week one, he was running the football well. So as far as offensive coordinator, the league, if you look around the NFL right now, there's some pretty intense offenses out there. And I think the one thing that you have to look at is matchups. And at the end of the day, the Patriots right now, matchup-wise, they don't really have a guy at the receiver position where another team looks at it and they say, we got nobody that can cover this guy, or we have to double this guy. So when you have one or two more pieces offensively in the receiver room, maybe a tight end that you have to put attention towards, it helps the offensive coordinator. It helps you run different plays and different schemes. But then how do you use those matchups? And if you look at the Rams, for example, they use a lot of motion and they use a lot of movement. And if you look at the 49ers, they love a lot of movement. They love some of that RPO, that run, check with me stuff. If I was the offensive coordinator with Drake Maye, I would want to see more movement, because the defense, what you're doing when you move guys around and then you have a quarterback that can potentially hand the ball off, keep the ball, then RPO, throw the ball down the field, you have to decide as a linebacker, am I dropping out in coverage here? Am I getting up in the line of scrimmage? Am I trying to stop the run? And it puts you in a bind. And that's what those offenses want to do. They want to put you in a bind. So if they continue with the same offensive system next year, they got to add some pieces. You have to have maybe a dynamic receiver, number one go-to guy. Look at the great teams right now. Kansas City they go out and they get another guy. They're getting their running back in the backfield. Guys that you have to know where they're at on the field, or else they're going to beat you. So I think for the Patriots moving forward, we all know the quarterback position is solidified. He looks great. He's a rookie, and he's going to continue to grow and get better. Do they need an offensive edge, a tackle guy? Probably. Can they get a guy to help out and protection? I would assume. Receiver, big need. You go get one piece that's a go-to guy that other teams have to put attention to. Maybe it opens up your number two guy better or more. So moving forward, who's going to be the offensive coordinator? I have no idea, but I would like to see this offense continue to progress as much as it can with what the offensive system has for talent.
Yeah, these next few weeks are really going to be critical, in my opinion. It makes it such an interesting discussion because I think we'd all acknowledge the talent isn't what it is for most other teams. And so how fair is it to really gauge what Alex Van Pelt can be as an offensive coordinator given that? But you've seen the quarterback improve. On the other hand, you haven't seen much motion at the snap. They are relatively static compared to a lot of offenses, compared to a lot of these West Coast offenses, which is the tree that he is from. So there's positives and negatives like there is with any sort of discussion like this. So whether it's ownership, whether it's Jerod Mayo, whether it's both, they'll have a decision to make at the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see where the entire offense is by the time we get to December and January. I did want to ask you about Mayo. You know the guy very well.
Yes.
What have you made about the culture, the response that you've seen from players, especially since they were called soft at the podium just a few weeks ago? It feels like they've responded. It feels like he has them playing for him, despite the fact that they're not really contending for a playoff spot right now.
Yeah, the whole soft comment thing, really not one player said anything about it other than, we couldn't stop the run and we couldn't run the football and we couldn't cover kicks, which if you can't do any of those things, you're pretty soft. So I had nothing against Mayo doing that. And at the end of the day, when you're a former player, Mayo had been in situations, I guarantee it, on the field where guys weren't stopping the run or guys weren't covering kicks. And when you're on the field, you can look over to the guy next to you and you could scream at him and say, what are you doing? Let's step it up. We're being soft. I have no issue with that. It seemed like the media had more issue with it than the actual players. But at the end of the day, when you walk off a football field and you put on the tape, you can watch good or bad football. So when they watched the tape, I'm sure they saw bad football, which you can't argue the fact that we weren't able to do much when you watch the tape. But I think Mayo has done a great job with coming into a tough situation where you're replacing a Hall of Fame coach and you are a former player, so you want to run things a little bit different. And guys in the locker room understand that you're a little closer to them in age than the former coach was. So you have more things in common with the guys that actually play the game, and you played. So there's a little, I'd say encouragement there when you're talking to somebody that's played versus, a coach that has been coaching a long time. But when the guy's been on the field and he's seen some of the things that you're trying to do, or he's done some things that you're trying to accomplish, there's definitely some encouragement there where you listen and say, hey, I want to hear everything he has to say to me about how to play this position, because he was a very good football player, high draft pick, played a long time, was very successful. How did he do that? I would love to know how to do that. I want to be like that guy. So, you look at Mayo, he's had a different approach to communication, and he talks about that often, having the open door policy. And today's players, especially 2024, they're different. You have guys coming in that they've NIL deals and their name and likeness, and they've transferred, and they're more sensitive to the fact that the way you're talking to them. So, I deal with it with my 8-year-olds. I'm trying to get my 8-year-olds to play flag the way I want them to play flag, and if they don't, I'm kidding. I asked them how they were feeling today. But
gassers, if they don't step up, we're running gassers until the sun goes down.
I've had them run a little after practice. Like, hey, that wasn't good enough. Let's run a few gassers. Let's do it. But that's
What's
football.
wrong with that?
But I think Mayo has done a good job, especially in the media has been very critical of everything he has to say, which granted, that's their job and that's what they're trying to do. But, I think there's also some things that, what do you want? Do you want the old regime where nothing was said and you really didn't get anything after a question, or you get a lot of information after a question and you dissect it a million ways and then make stories up out of it? So I think the media right now should be pretty happy that they are able to have a coach that talks a little bit more.
It is a slightly different experience. It is. I will say
it's
that.
It's a different experience.
A slightly different experience because the players aren't quite as, I don't know, fearful is the right word, but they're
not
fearful, a little bit differently
but
themselves.
You just knew that when you asked Bill a question, he's not going to give you anything. He's never going to give you anything that he thinks could become anything. And now, granted, that might be better because certain instances you think about Mayo, with the toughness thing, I understood what he meant. I definitely knew what he meant. But when you have to repeat yourself because everyone takes it and twists it and says, I can't believe you're calling these guys soft. It's just, I understand what he's saying as a former player. But then you have the flip side of the media where they'll take things and they create stories, which that's the name of the game. But, I think that when you go into an interview with Mayo, he is definitely giving you just him. That's just the way he is. So, I think that that could be a breath of fresh air for some of the media, but yet they still like to go crazy with it and write stories.
Well, we're going to do what we are going to do. I think more importantly, it's the players that are responding to that communication style. He is what he is. He's very genuine. He's very candid.
Yep.
And I think the players appreciate that. Rob, I would be remiss. We've already kept you way too long, but I would be remiss. Patriots just had a 9-sack game. Your guy used to rack up sacks on a very regular basis. The best part about the defense right now, the Patriots defense right now, in your opinion, is what?
Probably Christian Gonzalez and the front right now. They're playing together. They had a game plan going into this game. They stuck to the game plan. They were able to stay in front of the quarterback. They didn't run behind Caleb Williams, and they got to him 9 times. Now, the offensive line, it's bad, but you can't deal with what they're doing. You got to focus on what you're doing. You can't mind that they're not able to get the blocks done right. Like you're going out there as a defender and you're trying to play the game plan out and you're trying to get to the quarterback. So, I think that was a great effort by the defense. They knew it was going to be a challenge playing a guy that can move, get out of the pocket, similar to what they see in practice. So I think the defense has done a better job. That I'm not going to say that they've done a terrific job considering, they've probably let up more running yards than they would have liked it this year. But if you continue to work and you continue to try and grow as a defense and work on communication, considering they've lost some huge pieces defensively, I think of 3 guys that they don't have out there that are massive to, the success of their defense. And slowly but surely, you're seeing guys step up, you're seeing guys make plays, and hopefully they can continue to do that.
Rob Ninkovich, you are the best. The beard is so tremendously groomed right now. We appreciate your time. Go and listen, dear listeners. Go and listen to the Dan and Ninko podcast. If you're not doing that already, go subscribe to that thing. Support our guy. Nink, thank you for supporting us. You're the best. Thank you.
See you guys. Take care. Have a great one. See you, Phil.
All right, great stuff there from Rob Ninkovich. Thanks so much to him. Thanks so much to all of you for listening, for rating, for commenting, for subscribing on Apple Podcasts. Hit us up. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit subscribe. Leave a comment in there. I need to jump in, go back and forth with the people there. Always a lot of fun. Really appreciate you guys for being as active as you are wherever you happen to be listening to Next Pats. Keep it locked here because we're going to have another episode next week. We'll have another great guest for you. Maybe we'll do a little bit more forecasting, looking ahead to the draft because, believe it or not, we're getting closer each and every week that passes, creeping up on the Senior Bowl, creeping up on the Combine, and you know we're going to have that draft absolutely smothered here on Next Pats. So keep an eye out for our next episode next week. We'll talk to you then.